The new Evil Dead film has possessed audiences. The Sam Raimi-produced film is scaring audiences in the best way possible. This time the action is moved from an isolated cabin in the middle of the forest to an apartment building in a heavily populated area. What kind of havoc will the new evil Necronomicon unleash upon the unsuspecting public? With this being the 5th film in the Evil Dead franchise, that means that it is full of Easter eggs and references to other films in the shared universe. What Evil Dead Rise Easter eggs did we find? Early in the film, the younger characters are sent off to get some pizza while Beth and Ellie talk. When they return, we see that the pizza box is labeled as Henrietta's Pizzeria. There's also a picture of an older lady as part of the logo. Henrietta was the large deadite chained into the cabin's cellar. Ted Raimi played her in a giant foam suit. Henrietta and Ted Raimi would return in a time travel episode of Ash vs. the Evil Dead, where Ash would again face off against his undead foe. When Danny plays the record he finds with the Necronomicon, it mentions that this book was one of the book's 3 volumes. This would help incorporate all versions of the Necronomicon we've seen across the original films, the TV series, and the 2013 remake. Realistically, the remake could just be another story set at a different location than the original films. This makes it so all the films and the TV series can take place in the same cinematic world. After Ellie is possessed by the evil that the Necronomicon has unleashed, the family chains the door to the apartment and locks the deadbolt to keep her in the hallway. Ellie tricks Cassie into unlocking the door. When she does, Ellie reaches in to grab her but is stopped by the chain on the door. The scene is shot to resemble the look of the Deadites trying to escape from the chained cellar in the first 2 Evil Dead films and the 2000 remake. Ellie's face is pressed up to the opening of the door with her teeth bared. It's a fun Evil Dead Rise Easter egg that might not be obvious at first glance. Without having a cellar door to use, still fitting this in is great. When a character tries to use the elevator, cables come out of the ceiling and grab her. She's suspended from the ceiling in an homage to the evil tree scene in the original film. This version is a lot less rapey in its portrayal, but still it's just as twisted as bones begin to break and joints are dislocated. The sounds of this trauma are enough to make you squirm in your seat. This is a fun homage to the original film without just redoing the same thing we've seen before. As the characters try to escape, one of the possessed yells at them that they will swallow their soul. This is a throwback to Evil Dead 2. The evil deadite trapped in the cellar kept chanting that they would swallow their soul. As the action keeps ramping up, the chanting gets louder and louder until it becomes an annoying wail. Eventually, our hero Ash steps on the deadite's neck and tells it to swallow this, as he shoots it with his trusty boomstick. While it's played for laughs in the older film, in this one it takes a dark tone that gives you the creeps. Alyssa Sutherland does a great job of being as unnerving as possible on screen. 2 of our characters are trying to escape when the elevator fills with blood. They try to find a way out, but get engulfed in all that blood. The elevator doors finally open and a torrent of blood runs out as they fall, gasping into the hallway. This is very reminiscent of the famous shot from the movie The Shining, where the elevator doors open and a river of blood flows out of them to cover the foyer. This Easter egg seems obvious in Evil Dead Rise, but it's still fun to see. As Ellie is trying to attack her family, she tells them that they will be dead by dawn. This is the subtitle of Evil Dead 2. The deadite locked in the cellar also tells this to the people in the cabin multiple times throughout that film. In the original film, it was thought that when the sun appeared, it would cleanse the evil from those possessed. This would lead to the evil beings to try to make sure they killed their subjects before the sun came up. The sun rule would eventually be abandoned, but the phrase dead by dawn still holds an ominous tone. One of the residents of the apartment building ends up losing an eye at one point. It pops right out of their head and flies at another survivor. This is a nod to a similar scene in Evil Dead 2. The deadite in the cellar has its head smooshed in the cellar door. One of its eyes pops out and flies across the room where it lands directly in Bobby Joe's mouth. When Beth is in the parking lot garage facing off against the now combined bodies of the deadites, she's finally able to grab a chainsaw. There had to be one at some point, right? She does her hero stance and proudly proclaims, "Come get some." The battle then ensues with the Ellie deadite collection of bodies. This comes from the end of Army of Darkness as Ash tells his tales of time travel in S-Mart. A customer gets possessed and Ash is able to get his boomstick. He tells her, "Come get some," before dispatching the deadite easily. What Evil Dead Rise Easter eggs did you find? Let us know in the comments.
The Evil Dead franchise has been a part of the horror genre for 42 years, even longer if you count the film Within the Woods. In that time, the franchise has focused a lot on Bruce Campbell's reluctantly heroic final guy, Ash Williams.
Let's go.
Even the remake, released 10 years ago, managed to include Ash at the very end.
Groovy.
But the times they are a-changin', and in Evil Dead Rise, Ash Williams is not a part of the story. even though Bruce Campbell is an executive producer and does show up in a fashion, which I'll let you figure out how. And you know what? Ash not being a part of the bloody festivities is totally okay, as Evil Dead Rise stands on its own with new characters facing a very, very old menace, and it does it awesomely. Written and directed by Lee Cronin, Evil Dead Rise expands the universe of the Evil Dead in a smart way that allows literally all of the iterations to exist. It's not a remake, reimagining, or a reboot. Evil Dead Rise is really a sequel or another chapter in the Inked in Blood book of the Deadites. That isn't to say there isn't a lot of nods and Easter eggs within the film. There are a lot, which adds to the fun for fans who have been loving these films for as long as we have. Cronin was joined on the endeavor by not just Bruce Campbell, but Sam Raimi and Bob Tappert, who were also producers on the project. And you can tell that there was a lot of love for the series from not just the original gang, but Cronin and his crew as well. Evil Dead Rise moves the action from the woods, for the most part, and heads into an apartment building in the middle of the city. While you may think this would lessen some of the fear aspect for the demons, you have obviously never seen The Shining or Demons 2. Evil Dead Rise makes the most of what becomes a very confined feeling space and set. The look of the film is surreal in some spots, using camera angles and lighting to create a dark and sickly mood. The main focus is on Beth and Ellie, two sisters who have grown apart but are brought back together on a fateful night when Beth stops by to visit her older sister and her kids, Danny, Bridget, and Cassie, the youngest. Things take a turn when budding DJ Danny decides to play some very, very old records they've discovered, and the mother of all evil is unleashed. Evil Dead Rise manages to introduce and give you the history of the main characters fairly quickly and does it well. But it doesn't waste a lot of time getting to the nitty-gritty, and once it starts, doesn't let up. The film is a brisk 97 minutes, and it goes. No one is safe either once Mom Ellie is transformed into one of the most disturbing and terrifying female monsters I've seen in a while. Actress Alyssa Sutherland is fantastic in this, and she worked with Cronin and his team to create not only parts of Ellie's look, but also her movements. It's extremely effective, and I feel like a lot of fans are going to love it. Lily Sullivan is also great as Beth, who has to fight what was once her sister, but also protect her sister's children from what was once their mom. It's as messed up as you think it is, and honestly even worse than you can imagine, as the night from hell rolls along to an ending that would make every therapist in the world's head explode. Honestly, everyone does a great job with Morgan Davies, Gabriel Eccles, and Nell Fisher, all keeping the tension and terror ratcheted up while trying to stay alive. Nell Fisher is particularly great as the youngest Cassie, who just makes you want to hug her and keep her away from all the bad things as she witnesses pretty much all of the bad things a person could see. Evil Dead Rise is uniquely a very female horror film. It has female-centric leads with a number of horrific scenarios that include aspects of motherhood and sisterhood in ways that only an Evil Dead film could. Oh, and let's not forget the MVP of the movie, the cheese grater. Yes, it's as cringe-inducing as you could hope, and Lee Cronin should be locked up for thinking of that entire scene. Evil Dead Rise was originally supposed to be released as an HBO Max streaming exclusive, but due to the test audience's reactions to it, it was moved to a theatrical release, and it absolutely deserves it. This is the type of movie you should watch with an audience of fellow horror fans who will get every in-joke and who will scream and applaud at every gory moment right along with you. Oh, and it's the first horror film in, say, 30 years to give me a nightmare, where I woke up yelling for my mom. And once you see the movie, you'll wonder why the hell I was doing that, because you really should be running away from mommy. She's with the maggots now. Evil Dead Rise hits theaters everywhere, April 21st.